Beyond Paradise Season 2 Episode 1 begins with D.I. Humphrey Goodman investigating a murder on a train, or what appears to be a murder. It's actually part of the Shipton Abbott players' murder mystery night. Humphrey tells the pretend victim Paul Yellen that he did an excellent job. The murder mystery group gears up for a dress rehearsal, and Paul appears to cut himself while trying to put on his jacket. The train goes through the last tunnel before Shipton Abbott. Esther pulls Humphrey to the side to tell him that Paul is actually dead. Humphrey says one of the people in the other carriage is the murderer. Once the train arrives, PC Kelby Hartford joins the case. Kelby says 3 carriages were open and 2 members of staff were in the engineer cab and didn't see anything. The killer is likely one of the Shipton Abbott players. Humphrey points out there is no blood at the scene. At the station, Margot and Kelby discuss the players, and Margot asks someone to phone CS Charlie Woods because the press is getting involved. Humphrey and Esther try to learn more about the victim. Esther reveals the preliminary autopsy has confirmed the blade that punctured the right lung is the probable cause of death. Humphrey approaches Harry Bishfield, who says they had to slow the train yesterday. It could have been enough to let someone jump on the train and back off again. C.S. Woods tells Humphrey the case has caused a massive stir and the higher-ups are keen for a quick resolution. Humphrey is told about the importance of getting it right with his station house under review. Humphrey and Esther speak to the suspects/witnesses. Vivian tells them that she deals with the costumes and her husband Harry was the train driver. Kelby tells Margot it's odd that none of the neighbors saw the mystery man or the woman who chased him away. Humphrey thinks they are missing something obvious. Humphrey wants to check Paul's house, while Esther finds evidence that only one bedroom is being used, and it appears Paul led a very lonely life. When Esther and Humphrey leave Paul's house, they run into Kelby, who was next door. They suspect whoever was watching the house was actually watching Paul, and Margot learns that Paul inherited the house from the previous owner. She left him everything. At the station, Humphrey learns that Paul is actually called Aidan Scarcroft. His mom left him the house in her will. Paul changed his name before moving to Shipton Abbott. Esther learns that Aidan was released from prison 2 years ago after serving a 12-year sentence. He was convicted of manslaughter for speeding and crashing into a group of people waiting at a bus stop, which resulted in the death of an elderly woman. Esther learns that an 11-year-old boy named Christopher Bishfield was injured during the crash. Vivian and Harry would have been there when Paul showed up to join the players. They would never forget the face of the man who ruined their child's life. Humphrey and Esther suspect Harry followed Paul home. They question how Harry could have killed Paul. Humphrey figures out that Harry knew Paul would be alone as the train approached the last tunnel. Harry told Kieran there was debris on the line, and the engineer driver would slow the train and Kieran would have moved to the footplate to look at the track ahead. When in a tunnel, they'd have to use a torch. Once Kieran was out of the cab, Harry slowed the train and climbed back across the engine. He made his way to the back, killed Paul, and returned to the cab. Harry is brought in for questioning and tells them about the crash and how Aidan, aka Paul, was drunk at the time. Harry says Paul stole his son's childhood, and he took his life 6 years ago after he turned 19. Harry admits to killing Paul but doesn't feel sorry about it. Humphrey asks why there was a lack of blood and Harry explains that Paul wasn't standing. Esther gets the toxicology results and finds something very interesting. Humphrey believes Paul was already dead when he was stabbed. They suspect Vivian poisoned Paul and he got cut when he put on the jacket. When Vivian is brought in for questioning, she admits she knew Harry was planning on killing Paul. She argued with Harry outside Paul's house because he wanted to kill him that night. She couldn't stop him and she knew he'd get caught. Vivian killed Aidan to stop her husband from killing him. The episode ends with Vivian and Harry locked in cells. Later on, Esther questions what will happen to Vivian. Humphrey says it all depends on the CPS and who they think is responsible for Paul's death. Esther calls C.S. Woods to tell her the news about the case. The episode review. Season 2 of the Death in Paradise spin-off returns with this fun Agatha Christie-type murder mystery that feels familiar but enjoyable nevertheless. The plot is a bit silly, but it's great to see these characters again. Chris Marshall is a great leading man and the supporting cast around him is quirky and enjoyable to watch. It'll be interesting to see what other cases come up for the team as the series progresses.